Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to part 2 of the Firebase tutorial series on how to create our real-time chat application. And in our last video, part 1, I quickly gave you guys a demo of our chat application and all of its features regarding real-time chat. And also we went over how to build out a really good looking login page for our application. So that was pretty good. If you missed out on that video, look down in the description and make sure to click the link on part 1 and kind of get caught up before you start this video. So pretty good. A lot of really neat features and cool things about Firebase to go over today. So for example, we want to learn how to integrate Firebase SDK, Firebase 3.0 with Cocoapods. And then I'm going to show you guys how to authenticate a user into your system and also how to persist a user's data into the real-time database. So a lot of good stuff to go over. Now let's start off today with going over in Xcode right now the project that we have so far by just quickly running it and show you what we have on the screen in our simulator. So clicking the logout, we have our registration login page. And that's all we have so far. We have 3 fields: name, email, password. And upon hitting this register button, we should be able to ping the Firebase console and then register our user. So what I mean is, here is my Firebase demo application. And if I go over to Firebase console here, here's my empty database right now. And I want to register a user with the name of Jon Snow. And let's just use perhaps test22gmail.com with a dummy password as well. So when I register this new user, the SDK authenticates Jon Snow with his email into the system. And it also saves this user here that just showed up. And its information such as email, name, and profile is saved into our database so that we can query for our users later on. For example, clicking here, we query our database with this user right here. And that's how that works. So let's go back to, let's go back here and game of chats. So here's our application, and we want to actually integrate this Firebase SDK so that we can perform all those features. So I'm going to firebase.com. Here's how you actually download and install Firebase into your project. So firebase.com is a little confusing right now because this website points you to their old Firebase 2.0 documentation, which is not what you want. So go to firebase.google.com or click on that button to see this website and go to the docs section here. For iOS, getting started guide, and this is the guide that I followed to install Firebase. Now go to add Firebase to your app right here, and let's just follow these steps one by one. It's pretty quick here. I'm gonna click on Firebase console, and here we are. So you probably have to log in before you get to this page, and click create a new project. I'm going to give my project a name of Game of Chats, and hit create project. And this will probably take a few seconds to actually create all the necessary files inside of Firebase. I'll click here, add Firebase to your app. And for the iOS bundle, I'll go back to my project settings here, grab that little piece of code, or that's an ID string, go back to Chrome, paste that in here, hit add app. And now it's actually going to create this app file that you need to import into your project. So that file lives inside of my downloads directory here. And okay, so here's one thing that's a little tricky about this file. Because I have so many versions, and you might have a couple of versions as well, I'm going to drag this one in here and copy items if needed, copies it into your project. So I need to actually modify this, but you guys are probably okay. So it needs to look like that. And let's go back to Chrome here, hit continue. And now we need to install the Firebase SDK into our project. So let's see. It's telling me to create a pod file if you don't have one. So here's the typical process to creating a file or an Xcode project that uses Cocoapods, right? So I'm going to open up a new terminal tab here. Here's what we are going to do. So if I do this right here, I will just drag in, for example, this app delegate right here. I'm going to drag that into the terminal, and that gives me the location of my project. So I'm just going to backspace all the way to the root directory here. So game of chats right there. Let's cd change directory into that folder. And here you want to type pod init like that. And then what does Chrome tell us to do? So it says, open up your pod file, and you can do this here. So we have this pod file here. ls just lists the directory contents. And I'm going to use vi here because it's a little easy, or easier for me at least, to edit these files. So we hit vi, you'll get into this file here. And this is actually a text file. So you can edit this in Notepad if you want. And let's go down to this line right here. So I'm gonna hit Shift A, gets me to the last line. And now I'm in text insertion mode. I'm gonna hit enter. And it's telling you to add this pod Firebase right here, but you actually need a couple of other different pods in here to get our project up and running. The first of which is this database pod, and I'm going to use Firebase /auth as well. And while we're here, I am also going to use Firebase /storage to upload our profile images later on. So I just hit escape and hit :WQ, and that's to write and quit. So that saves and quits, right? So if you want to actually edit this in Notepad, you can actually open this directory here by open /, and you can open this with text edit here. Gives you this file, and you can just type in here. So the only tricky thing is these quotes have to be the regular quotes and not the one that text edit gives you. So anyhow, remember, you can always download this project later on in the description for the complete source code. And now what you need to do is you need to hit pod install like this. So if you type in pod and you don't get this whole chunk of commands right here, that means you haven't installed Cocoapods. So if you need to install Cocoapods, go to Google and type in that. So Cocoapods guides, getting started. And it's going to tell you to run this command here. So if you run this command, you'll install Cocoapods. And I'm just gonna run that right here and see what my terminal tells me to do. So it's installing the entire gem for Cocoapods. And let's see how long this takes here. So it's installing, it's also updating as well. And now we are done. So I can actually use pod install in this same directory, and it's going to install all of these pods inside of my project. And it tells me to close out my current Xcode session, which is this right here. So I'm gonna close that, stopping the task. And it's telling me to use this open or this XC workspace file. So the ls, we have this file here. And if we type in open /, we'll get this. And if we double click this project here, we actually get this pod to actually integrate inside of our project right here. So if I change to iPhone 6s and run this project again, it's going to load the exact same project in our simulator, but now we have the SDK installed. So that is that. Pretty good. And now we're ready to move on to the next step of this little walkthrough here. So the initialization code that we need to include is this import line here. So let's go to app delegate and import it right below import UI kit. And what else? Firebase app.configure inside of this did launching. So here I'm going to say Firebase app and configure. And now we can run our app, and the console is going to spit out a lot of Firebase debugging messages. So let's just see what we get here. And this pretty much says that it's configuring the app and it's ready to go. And that's exactly where we need to be. Now we can hit finish, and it's going to bring you to this little dashboard section, and we need to actually do a couple of things before our database works. So let me show you guys the mistake I made a couple of times when trying to add data into this database here. So here's the database, and the way to save data into our database is this. So I'm going to go to this real-time database section and use this getting started for iOS. And here it's telling me to do a bunch of stuff, and we've done this already. And now we actually need to start saving some data. So let's go to save data here, and let's toggle the Swift option. And all right, so let me show you guys how to start saving data into your database. So if you go to View Controller and you try to save data into your database, you need to actually import Firebase here as well. And what you need to do is you need to allocate a variable called reference, and this needs to say Firebase database reference from URL with a string. And this database, or this URL, is actually this URL here. So if you copy this link here and you go back to your project, you need to paste that link here. So I'm just going to include that in quote strings here, and reference dot update child values. You need to specify a dictionary like this. So some value will be, let's just say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if I run this application now, the console is going to actually give me an error message. So let me just show you what that error message is. So here is the error message: invalid claim odd in auth token. That is what it says. And that's pretty good. So basically, I'm going to stop the application, and it's saying that I need to perform authentication to actually get access to my database in order to save data. And the way to do that is to hit this auth tab here, and you need to set up a sign-in method. And the easiest one is to set up this email password, enable, save. And now your Firebase console is able to authenticate users into your system. So let's go to login controller now and actually authenticate a user in our application. So I am going to comment that out right there and go to login controller. So let's just run this to see what we need to do. So upon hitting this logout, we get our screen, and I want to trigger an action on this register button. So I have this login register button here, and I want to actually call a target right here. So add target like that, target itself. Selector will be this selector down here. So I'm going to create this function called function handle register like that. And control events will be touch up inside right there. This will say handle register, if I can type that out correctly. And we are almost good to go. So it's giving us this error message here. And to fix that, we just type lazy var like that. And that's because it needs access to self. And this gives us access to self. Don't worry about that so much. It's not too important. And here, when we hit register, let me just print out 1, 2, 3 and run the application now. We'll get this register message saying 1, 2, 3. So print 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's what we get. So pretty good, not too bad. And what do we need to do now? Well, we actually need to call this authentication function from Firebase auth. So notice how I don't have Firebase here. That's because I have not imported Firebase. And let me just bring this down there, and okay. So Firebase needs to authenticate via Firebase auth, and create user with email. So what is email, password, and completion? Well, email is actually email text field, which is this text field here. And we need to get .text like that. And because this is optional, and this right here is also optional, so password text field .text. The easier way of getting these values is to actually use a guard statement. So guard statements are really useful for forms and form validation. And here's how you actually use it. You say guard let email equals email text field dot text, and then you say password equals password text field dot text like that. Then you say else return here. And you can also include some print statement here saying that form is not valid or something of this nature here. And now, whenever you don't have valid values for these two properties, it's just going to return out. So in here, you actually have access to these variables. So email gives you this string, and then password gives you the password string. And now we're pretty much good to go. So Firebase user, so if I just type it out here, error, perhaps just leave it as error, doesn't need a type. And I'll check if error is not equal to nil. We'll print out the error. Let's see, error, and return out. Otherwise, we have successfully authenticated, let's see, user. And that's what we get. Cool. So let's see, this needs a question mark there because it is a optional type. And now we should be okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run the application now. And whenever we hit that register button, we'll actually authenticate this new user into our system. So if I open up my real-time database here, and it's currently blank, so we'll try to register a user here with, let's see, test1@gmail.com. And here we'll just use a dummy password and hit register. And so let's see what happens in our code. Okay, and here we go. Let's check this authentication section. And we have test1@gmail.com, which was created just now with this user UID. And that's pretty good. So that's how we get our user into our system, by sending in an email and password. Nice, nice, nice. Now, the more important thing for our application is to actually persist these users along with their name in a way so that we can actually retrieve these users and send messages to them via this chat application. So we do that using this database section tab here. And in code, here is what we need to do. We actually need to save the user right here on line 50. Oh. And let's see. The way we do this is to actually use the reference that we saw earlier in this bit of code here. So I'm going to copy, let's see, let me copy both of these lines here. So let me take this, cut that out, go back here, paste that in here. So this gives us our reference, and update child values will save a couple of different values, right? So let's just use values equal this dictionary here. And the first will be name, and this will take in name text field dot text. That's an optional, and we don't want optionals. In other words, we will create this name variable here, set it equal to name text field dot text, and that gives us the name right here. And what are the other two values? Well, the other value to save is the actual email, like that. And let's save an email like so. And here we can just include this update child values using this values dictionary. So let's see, instead of doing this, let me access the completion block for that. And update child values and with completion block, and use values here with a completion block. This is an enter, the error, and ref for that. And let's just do this. If error, let's see, let's use a different error variable here. And we'll use, let's see, this is ERR. If this is not nil, let's print out this error here. Otherwise, return. And if we do not have error, that means we've successfully included this user into our database. So let's just type out here, print saved user successfully into Firebase DB. Okay. And let's see, here, and here is good. So I'm gonna run the application now, and I'm gonna create a new user and execute this bit of code. So let's log out. Let's punch a name here. So John Snow, and John Snow will have test2, gmail.com, some dummy password. So let's take a look at this console here and see what happens. So I'm gonna register John Snow, and let's see what we get. So we have test2@gmail.com and name of John Snow. And that's how our application should look like. So let's just see what we have here. I want to go to my console and show you the proper way of saving data into this database. And basically, here's how Firebase works. It uses child and root nodes to save data. And in order to make sense of all this data, I want to save my users into this users node. Here's what I'm going to do. So let me just show you how this works here in Xcode. And let's just use this right here. So whenever we have a reference here, we can actually create a child reference like this. So users reference like this equals ref.child, and just pass in a string of whatever you want. So I'm going to create this user's child here. And now I can actually save it. Instead of using ref, I'll use users reference, update childs, and I am going to run this application now. So it's better, or it's more easy to show if I just delete everything here by hitting the X, delete, and now I will log out here. Let's use John Snow again. So John Snow with test3@gmail.com, dummy password, register. And here is now our new structure for our data. So that's pretty nice. And let's see, what else do I want to show you? So here is actually what I want to do as well. So all users need to be unique somehow. And they are given an ID every time you authenticate this user through authentication here. And I want to actually save it into our application. So the way I am doing it now is I'm going to create another child reference inside of users. So let's just use child, users, and child again. And here we'll use user.uid. So user.uid. So this Firebase user has this property on it called UID. So if I hit Control+6, UID gives me this, and has a property UID, and it says it's the provider's user ID for this user. So going back here, I will actually do this. So let's just use guard let UID equals user.uid else return right here. So this guard statement will give me this access to UID, so I can just use it right here. Let's just remove that. And now we'll get reference to users, and then it gives me this child node. So it's kind of hard to explain what this is doing. So in order to show you more easily, I am going to run the application one more time and register a different user. So back to Chrome, and we have this structure. So this is our initial structure. And if I use, let's see, who else is a good character? Jamie Lannister. And let's see, Jamie. Or let's just use test4@gmail.com. Password, dummy password again, register. And let's see what this gives us. So this new user now was just created here under this node under his user ID. And now we have him under this user ID. So I'm going to delete that right there. And let's just delete this as well. Delete that. And now let me run my application again to create Jon Snow, giving me all of the necessary information for that user. So let's go back to Chrome and log it out. So Jon Snow at, let's see, test5@gmail.com, dummy password, register. And now we have users separated by their user IDs here. So that's pretty good. And that is a nice place to stop our video for today. And in our next video, I want to show you how to retrieve all of these users inside of your database and present them into your application like this right here. So if I tap in Jon Snow right there, I get that. If I log out and try to register my Jamie Fellow character here inside of my demo application, let's see, I guess the name does not really matter. Let's just use test23 right there. And this actually needs to be a valid email address. Register. Let me just give him a character profile here. Why don't we make him a Hodor character? Register. All right, that gives us him. And so we pull in this list here, and I'm going to show you guys how to pull in all of your users inside of a table and nicely show their name and perhaps their image on the left. Okay, that about wraps it up for the video today. Learned a lot of really exciting new tricks to working with Firebase. So make sure to thumbs up if you like today's content and hit that subscribe button. It really does help out the channel. And also, like usual, we have the project all set up and ready for you to download in the link below for the complete project. And if you are interested in following me on Twitter, you can follow me at Build That App. Should be available down there as well. So remember, we're going to keep on building out this project. It's quite complex and there's a lot of features, so it's going to be quite the ride. Hope you guys enjoy and have a nice day. Bye.